Hey guys, I've just finished my round 4 game at the Yurtayev Memorial in Kyrgyzstan, and it was a crazy one. It lasted more than 70 moves, and it made me realize that I suck at endgames. Thankfully, my opponent apparently also sucks at them. It was an interesting game, very instructive. You will learn many things from it. Also, check out my dog, my trusted second. He's also joining me today in this recap. So let's start. Yes, I came to the tournament with my dog and also with my girlfriend. So I have a whole team here and they support me, and maybe that's why I'm playing decent chess here. So today I was playing a veteran player, a senior. He is more than 70 years old. Actually, it's the second senior in this tournament playing against me. Already I've defeated one in the first round. Check out that game. That veteran was very disrespectful towards me. This one, well, you will see what he did. So I'm playing with the black pieces. My opponent's name is Zhandilda Abitov. He's also from Kazakhstan, also from Almaty, where I currently live. And he's rated around 1850, so a little bit lower rated than me, but still in Kazakhstan there is rating deflation, so 1850 in Kazakhstan is like 2000 in Europe or even more. So let's see what he did. So again, there is this position on the board similar to my round 2 game, and here I take, it's the burn variation in the French defense, and my opponent suddenly decides, you know what, I want to trade all the pieces. And he proceeds to trade many pieces. Here I go c5, and he trades even more pieces. He trades the bishops. And here he offers a queen trade. And I don't have any other option but to agree to this trade. And I was really not happy with what he did, because you know what, he's an old player, a Soviet school player, and they all are very good at endgames. They have studied the Naroditsky's endgame manual, the famous Soviet manual for playing endgames that has like 1,000 or even more pages. They have this old school of playing endgames that young players lack, including myself. I feel much more comfortable in dynamic positions, in tactical positions than in technical endgames. So here he takes the queen, obviously, and this is an equal position. According to the computer, it's absolutely equal. Maybe even black is a little bit better, because black does not have to castle the king, but rather can leave the king in the center. This is what I did. And here I was a little bit unhappy that I'm going to play an endgame and it's a bit drawish. And also veteran players, senior players tend to go to endgames because their brain is not as, powerful as it used to be. It's not diminishing or disrespecting the older players. Is just a fact, medical fact. Your brain does not work as well as it used to when you are 70 plus years old. So you tend to blunder more often in complex positions with many pieces on the board. That's why such players tend to go to endgames, where it's not as important to stay alert all 3, 4, or even 5 hours of the classical chess game. So this is good strategy, and apparently this is the strategy that was employed by my opponent. But here I was feeling a little bit unhappy, but still I was like, okay, you know what? Let's play an endgame. I'll try to win in an endgame. I'll try to outplay you, the Soviet player, in an endgame. Let's see if I manage to do that. So we maneuver, and here I want to put my knight in the center. The d5 square is really juicy for the knight, and also my king. Yes, it's maybe a little bit. It might get a little bit uncountable down this file, but it's an endgame. I won't get checkmated, and yes, he has this check, while I cannot take because of this spin. But I will just go king f6, and he will have to retreat with the knight. So there's nothing too scary about this. So here I go knight b6. He goes rook e2, intending to double the rooks, but I go g5. It's a good move because I want to prevent him from going f4. If he goes f4, he will prevent me from ever going e5. And also, when looking at such positions, you should look at the pawn structures. And I have 4 pawns on the king side, whereas he has just 3. But he has 3 pawns on the queen side, whereas I have just 2. So the idea for him is to advance the pawns on the queen side, whereas the idea for me is to advance my pawn majority. This is the chess term, pawn majority on the king side. And here my opponent, I think, did not do did not choose the correct approach. Well, I'm not a Soviet player, so maybe I'm wrong, but I think my approach was more principled here. He tries to disallow me from going g4, but whatever. I go knight d5. Now he has weakened his f4 square by going h3, because if I put my knight on f4, g3 will be problematic, because I will be able to take this pawn, and also this rook will be hanging. So he has to weaken a little bit more with g3. Now he weakens this square, and also in some future I can advance the pawn to h4, make him take, and still put my knight on f4. That's one of the plans. And already I start feeling the momentum. The momentum is on my side, but still it's absolutely equal, of course. So king f6 is a useful move, sidestepping all the checks on f5. He goes rook a2 e1, and here I go rook c8. It's important here to always look out for tactics. Also in endgames, tactics are abound very often. For example, if I go knight e7, it's a very bad move, because he can take on e6. And if I take, he takes with a rook, with a check. And next he'll take the knight, and he'll be up 2 pawns, and I will be completely losing in this position. So look out for tactics even in the driest endgames. This is a good rule of thumb. Here I go rook c8, because I want to develop my rook, maybe to c5, later on to double up. So activating rooks is important. He goes rook e5, trying to pressure my g5 pawn, but I neglect this because, yes, he can go, for example, knight f3, but then I'll just go rook g8, and this will be protected. And later on, I want to push either h4 with the intention of trading off these pawns and grabbing this f4 square for my knight, or in some variations I want to go g4 and dislodge this knight from f3, and later on maybe I will be able to put my knight on f3, forking the house. So these are the possible plans. I go h5, and here he goes king h2, anticipating the opening up of the g file once these pawns get traded, because in some variations otherwise I could have won a tempo by checking him. So this is his idea. I go knight b6. Actually, it's the top engine move. I was very proud of myself finding this move, because backwards knight moves are far from obvious. The idea here is I want to jump to c4. And it's not just a fork on the rook and the pawn, because he can drop back, of course. But also I dislodge this rook from this aggressive outpost on e5. Also, I put my knight on an active square, and also I prepare e5 in future. So this is a multi-purpose move. And also in some variations I jump in with my knight to d2, and then I threaten various knight f3s. For example, I can even sack the rook here and then jumped on f3. So this is very, very interesting. Here, by the way, there was an important nuance. We both missed this, but he could have taken on e6 here. I calculated this and I saw rook e8 and I pinned him and I win material. But no, this is not where the variation stops. Neither of us saw rook f5 check, a rook sacrifice. Fascinating. And if I take, which I have to do, he has knight g7, a fork, and once I drop back, he takes my rook. And he has won a pawn. Thankfully, I have knight a4 here, a nice resource attacking both pawns. So if b3, I will take on c3, and if he protects with the rook, then I can take here and then take here and then go here. So this will be an equal endgame. But this is very, very beautiful in my opinion. I missed this during the game. So the fact that he can take here. I was intending to go rook a8 and here my calculation stopped, but rook f5, this is what I missed. Wow. Also, I should say that if I take here, he takes with a check. And then he has this check and he takes many pawns and he has decent compensation for the sacrificed piece. And if I go here, I'll get mated. So this is a trap that could have occurred. Of course, I wouldn't have done that, but still. So, okay, this is a variation that did not happen. He dropped back because I wanted to go knight c4, so he anticipated that. I spent some time calculating variations here, by the way, h4. This is what I thought could happen. But I thought that I can take and go either knight c4 or rook d5, and I'm perfectly fine, and his king is a little bit clumsy here, and maybe I can restrict its movement, so black is a little bit better here. This is what I calculated. So he instead dropped back, and I activated my rook. And here I was really confident that my position is getting better and better. The computer gives slight advantage to black, but really it's just more pleasant to play with black than with white. I intend to push, maybe put my knight here, maybe put my knight here, maybe double up my rooks, maybe go for the e5 plan once I, for example, put another rook on d5. So I have very many plans here. And my pawns will start rolling, whereas his pawns cannot, because this pawn is protecting the knight, so it cannot go forward. This pawn is protecting the c3 pawn, so it cannot go forward, because otherwise this pawn will be lost. So it's not easy for white to move in this position. White drops back, but here I just double up my rooks. Here he goes rook e4. You see those shuffling pieces. Well, the idea is probably to go either to b4 with the rook and maybe advance with the pawn, or to go c4, c5. So this is a logical move, but still here I can infiltrate, and I do that with my rook, going rook d1. He retreats with a king, preparing to protect the pawn. I exchange one pair of rooks and activate my knight. And I really like my position. The computer gives minus 0.4. So half a pawn advantage for black because of the activity of the pieces. I want to infiltrate. I want to infiltrate with my knight, then put my rook on d2, and that will be very unpleasant for white. But white fights back. Rook e2, first of all, protecting the second rank. I go e5. Here I was thinking and choosing between e5 and b6 because I wanted to restrict the knight's movement, but eventually I chose e5. The computer says it's not the best move, b6 was better, but the differences are really subtle here. So he jumps in with the knight, I kick him back, he gives me a check, I go forward with the king, and the position is around equal. He goes f3. Here I didn't really like this move. I thought that this is a weakening. This weakens the e3 square, and I wanted to exploit that. So I went a rook d3. Now I want to jump in with my knight, checking him and infiltrating, maybe going to d1 with the knight later on. d1, sorry for my poor arrows. So he goes king f2 here, and here I strike with g4. Really active play, trying to get to his pawns, to destroy them, to win some material. Takes. And here he goes b3, trying to kick my knight, but here I have a check. He drops back, and now knight e3, and this is a beautiful position. The computer, of course, defends this with white, but it's very difficult. He goes king d2, I check him, and I take one pawn of his. And yes, he can take my e5 pawn, but also his c3 pawn is hanging. So I take the c3 pawn, and now I am up one pawn. Yes, he can win back one pawn, and I was calculating this variation. Rook e7, 4 king, 2 pawns. I go f5, he takes, I go f4, and if, for example, he checks me, I go king f3, and I thought that this should be close to winning. The computer is not impressed. The computer says it's drawish, but I thought that I have winning chances here. Turns out maybe I don't. But he decided against this. He did not go rook e7. He went rook f5. And here I found a clever resource. I wanted to go rook f3 to protect this pawn in such a creative way, because he cannot exchange the rooks. He's down a pawn. Obviously, the pawn endgame is losing for him. But I decided, you know what? I can first make him move his king further. Rook e3 check. because he cannot go king f1. That would lose immediately, because that would force a rook trade and lead to a winning king and pawn endgame. So he has to go to the d file. He went king d2, and now he is cut off from my pawn, and my pawn will advance very soon because I go rook f3. He checks me, I go king f2, and now my pawn is ready to advance. He goes rook g7. He wants to take my a7 pawn if I go f5, but I don't give him that. I go a5. And here I was really liking the way I'm playing this. I was like, wow, I'm almost like Magnus Carlsen, genius of endgames. But this did not last long. Spoiler alert. He went rook g8, I go f5, and he goes rook b8. He wants to take my pawn. So this is a complicated endgame. Maybe it's winning, maybe it's losing. Here I missed an interesting resource, king g3. I somehow didn't see this. We both were already low on time. So the idea is that if he takes, he will lose another pawn. And maybe I can win this. Although probably it's also theoretically drawish. Because, well, most rook endgames are drawn. This is a notorious fact. But okay, I did not find rook g3. I didn't think about that. I wanted to push my pawn, and I give up the b pawn, but still I push. Here I want to go rook e2, probably this is a threat, and take a pawn, but he goes a4, prevents this. I go f3, trying to push. He goes rook b5, trying to eat this pawn. And here, at this point, I was like, oh man, this is probably drawn. I was like sitting at the board and like, where did I squander my winning advantage? Maybe there was no winning advantage at all, but I thought that I have good winning chances. And now he'll just take this a pawn of mine, and he will even be able to probably give up his rook for my pawn and have two connected passed pawns against the rook, and my king will be far away from them, so it will probably be a theoretical draw. And I was a little bit upset, but I was like, you know what, I want to play for a win. I want to win this game. I'll do my best. If I don't, well, then maybe that was fate, but I'll do my best. So I checked him. I checked him again to win time, because every time we make a move, 30 seconds get added to the clock, and I had like 2 or 3 minutes, so plus 1 minute after a move repetition is a good thing to have. And here, surprisingly, he did not repeat. He did not go king d3. He did not repeat the second time, but he went king d1. Probably he thought that's a better move. But apparently now he's losing, according to the computer. So the correct way to proceed here, there are 2 moves that win for black here. Rook b2 and rook a2. And you can put a gun barrel to my head and ask me why, but I will not be able to answer. Well, let's look at the computer lines. So why does rook b2? I understand, because I will be able to take this pawn if he takes this. So probably this is the reasoning. But why does rook a2 win? If he takes, I go king e3. If check, then king f4. Ah, very interesting. So rook here f2, and if this check, what's next? Ah, okay, I cannot push my pawns because they will get eaten, and otherwise there will be queen in next. So this is the idea, but with a couple of minutes on the clock, that was difficult to find. So here I should have gone either rook b2 or rook a2. I missed this, unfortunately. I went king f1. I wanted to push, and in the spirit of the Lucina position, I wanted to build a bridge. Do you know how to build a bridge in rook endgames? I will show you now. So he took my pawn, and I went f2, and he went rook b5. Again, I can win here. I missed. There are 2 winning moves, rook b2 and rook e3. Rook e3 is about building a bridge, but I went rook e4, actually, with the same idea. So the idea is rook f5, for example. For example, if he doesn't go rook a5, if he goes just a5, then I can check him first. And then I go here, and if he gives me a check, I go here, and if he gives me a check, I block. This is building a bridge. This is what it is. But he doesn't have to do that, by the way. He can do rook f5 immediately. And that's apparently a draw according to the computer. Wow. Chess is brutal. So yeah, apparently here, instead of rook e4, this is what I did. Rook e3 was winning because I'm hitting this pawn. And if he goes b4, I go king g2. And if he gives me a check, for example, rook g5, I block. And if he goes here, I block. And here I've successfully built a bridge. And next, I will queen. So this is what I missed. Unfortunately, I missed this, but the game is not over. And this is not the last mistake in this game. So I went rook e4 instead with the same idea, but he goes rook f5, and now he can successfully give up his rook for my pawn, whereas he has two connected passed pawns that are really, really far from my king. So it's a theoretical draw. I check him. I go king e2. Now I want to queen. And yes, had I been able to teleport my rook to f3, that would be a successful bridge building, but it's not possible here. But here, there is just one move for white to make a draw. All other moves lose. The move to make a draw is very logical. I would have made it probably without hesitation here. a5, you should push your passed pawns. Yes, if I queen, you give up the rook. I take, but my king is very, very far away. It will take forever for the king to get there. Whereas white's king is closer to the action, and once the rook drops back, b4 comes, and once the king runs, b5 comes, and if the king tries to come closer, king c4, king e4, b6, king e5, king c5, and black can even lose this game. For example, rook d5 is already losing because takes, b7, I cannot stop the pawn. So here in this position, black should be careful to make a draw. Rook c8, king d6, b7, and all moves lose except one for black. So rook b8, for example, loses to king b6, and then a6 and a7 is winning for black. So only one move for black draws king c7. This is crazy because if white takes the rook, this is a theoretical draw. This a pawn will not queen because the king will just stay in the corner and it will be a stalemate. So this is funny. So it's even possible for white to win this endgame. If white goes a5 and then gives up the rook. But my opponent, for some reason, decided that he can give up the rook right away. But the difference is that now my king is not as far. It's not on f1, it's on f2. And also this pawn is not on a5, but on a4. So this is the difference that makes this a losing position for white, surprisingly. King c3, king e3. a5, king e4. I'm cutting him off on the 4th rank. He cannot advance with the king. And the pawns, also, if they advance, they cannot advance far. I go king d5, and for example, b5, I go king c5, and I catch the pawns. If here, then I can go, for example, rook b4, yes, and he doesn't have any moves. He's cut off now on this file. King d3, I go king c6, and then I go rook a4, and I eat the pawns. So he can do nothing here in this position. b4 loses. This is why he decided to go a6 to give up one pawn. Rook d6, and I take, but at least he activates the king and he tries to shoulder my king, not allow my king to advance and try to push the pawn. But here I'm very precise. I go rook a3, attacking the pawn, then I check him, then I attack the pawn again, winning a tempo, and then I join the opposition. So this is called the opposition when your king is right opposite the enemy's king. And this allows me to shoulder his king now. And I attack his pawn. And here he resigns because if he goes b6, I go king c5. And next I'll take the pawn. And if he goes king a6, for example, I also go king c5. And next I'll take the pawn. So I managed to lose this crazy endgame. But I think at 2 moments I could have won it and squandered the advantage. And he could have drawn it had he played the correct way. So I'm not happy about this endgame technique of mine. My coach I've sent him the game right after the game, and he looked at it briefly, and he told me he liked it. He said some words of encouragement, but still I'm disappointed in myself, but I'm happy that I won. So I'm on 3 out of 4 points. I'm in shared second place in the tournament, but there are 5 more rounds to go, so we will see what happens next, and we will see if my endgames get better. Thank you for watching. Looking forward to your comments. Bye-bye.